introduction of our next champion, Cody Dissertel, member from the Colville tribe, the director of the lands program. Other than that, he's very engaged and very willing to step up and participate at a national level in that national discussion. So appreciate Cody stepping up and giving us some wise words.
Thank you, Jim. I'm not sure how wise the words will be, but I'll give you some words and I'll try to make it quick to finish up today. I felt pretty comfortable coming up here until Jim went before me. Now I'm kind of nervous, kind of set the bar high, and hopefully I can live up to what he has to say. So we've had a lot of conversation today about anchor forests and TFPA and how we try to manage across the landscape. But kind of what I was charged with is how does somebody in a manager's position get that done on the ground? And that's a tough question to answer. So my PowerPoint, management from a staff perspective, and how do we make things happen on the ground? So we've started down this road at Colville. This is kind of a plan I've put together for us, but I hope it applies to everybody. I think there's a lot of similarities between different agencies, whether that be the Forest Service or the BIA or different tribes. So I think the first step in the process is to define the problem. I should go through the outline, I guess, because we're going to go into more detail with more of this as we go on. So this is kind of the points I'm going to cover. Open communication with your collaborators, be that different agencies or special interest groups, and then devise a plan to address the problem. We have a handle on what the forest health issues are, what the fuel issues are. How do we design projects that address those issues? And then the final step, getting the actual projects on the ground. How do we get folks out there? How do we get funds allocated? How do we make sure that something's accomplished on the ground that moves us toward that desired future condition? So scope of the problem, again, we'll give you a little bit of a Colville perspective here. We have a TFPA proposal in on both the Okanagan, Wenatchee, and the Colville, which happens to split our northern boundary almost right down the middle. So in developing that TFPA proposal, one for each side, we had to look at what the problem is. So this is a insect and disease map that shows the 2010, 11, and 12 flights. So obviously there's plenty of insect and disease activity, both on national forests adjacent to us and on the reservation. Similar agents, just a matter of severity in most cases. The tribe's done a pretty good job of managing, but as good a job as we do and as many acres as we treat, we still have forest health issues. It just goes back to the point that you need to be active in your management, and just because you treated it once doesn't mean you're done. And the national forests up there haven't done a bad job. Colville especially, I would applaud the work those guys do up there. I mean, Russ kind of alluded to it. 40 million feet a year is not bad for those guys, but again, we're cutting almost 80 on the same size forest, and we still have, we were at 50 million feet of mortality on our last CFI measurement, which shocked me because we cut a ton of wood up there. We treat a ton of acres, 8 to 10,000 acres a year, up 660. It's tough to stay ahead of those types of issues. So obviously, scope the problem, it's a big problem. We need to devise a plan that addresses all of those issues in a timely manner and continues to address those issues over time. So step one, after we address the issue, is go talk to our collaborators. We obviously know who that is. Looking at the map, we have a lot of Forest Service ownership up there. There's also some state property and some private right along the reservation boundary. We made a point of talking to the district folks first. We wanted to get them up to speed because they're the ones that were going to support these types of proposals and projects up the chain to the forest supervisor and then on down to the region where those TFPA proposals are approved. So we had early discussion with those folks, and to my knowledge, I've been working in forestry for about 15 years. If you'd asked me a year ago who works up on the Colville National Forest, I couldn't give you a single name. And that's just, collaboration is a two-way street. So we have to make a point of going to visit those folks. We used to say, oh, those Forest Service guys, they never come down to visit us. And, well, do you guys go up there? Well, no. So it's a two-way street. We got to make sure that we're as adamant about spending time with them as they are with us. So then we, met with the district folks, review their district and forest management goals. So these guys have goals the same as the tribe does. They're trying to meet different objectives. Sometimes the tribes are more successful because we have a few more tools in the toolbox. We kind of give ourselves some options, and our public, again, is a little smaller, so the folks that we have to deal with are less lesser in number, I'm not sure the issues are any different. I know it's odd that, okay, you'll have a special interest group in the Forest Service and they want wilderness here, and tribes have the same issues, they just may come from a different group. So a good example, I'm sitting on the couch the other day watching a baseball game. My wife's looking at Facebook. Oh, my aunt's mad about this. You need to call her and talk to her. Okay. So I get on the phone. Okay, what's going on? You don't like this. We have a carbon sequestration project that we're kind of working on, and they were just bashing it on Facebook. And she gets on there. Cody, I thought you were smart. What are you guys doing? This is a horrible idea. And it took a good 20 minutes to explain what the process was and what we were committing to. But those are the kind of challenges you run into, I guess, as tribal folks. You have the same opinions out there. You have the same naysayers. But sometimes it's more difficult because it's your aunts and uncles, your cousins, your brothers and sisters. That's a hard battle to fight and win a lot of times. They've grown up with you, so they know what decision-making capacity you have sometimes, and you don't always make good choices. So, moving on with that, we develop a plan of action with those district personnel. Now that we know their goals and objectives, we try to get together with them and say, okay, this is what we're doing on our side of the fence. This is what you're doing on your side of the fence. How can we work together to make those fit? And then as we're making successes, we need to communicate those up the chain. So we need to let from the district folks on up to the forest soup, on up to the region. Region, we can do good things. This is our plan. Put it together. We need to support that on up the chain. And then even up to the national and to elected officials, because sometimes things don't always go smooth. It really depends on what region you're from. I mean, we've heard a number of different success stories, and we've heard a number of different failures. I mean, you may get to a forest supervisor that goes, well, I don't know, I'm close to retirement, I don't really want to do this, this kind of seems like a real pain, so you have to go up. I mean, we have these plans in place. You go to Brian Rice over in DC. Brian, I'm just not making any progress with this, buddy. We need some pressure on this guy. Okay, so I guess I kind of jumped ahead there a little bit, but devise a plan. What are your desired future conditions? What are you trying to get to? And we have to consider more than forest health. I mean, obviously, forest health is a big consideration for us as foresters, but, I mean, from a tribal perspective, we have very holistic goals. We're looking at fish habitat, wildlife habitat, cultural plants, traditional places for gathering medicines or just prayer. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that folks do, and, I mean, a lot of times there's very common goals for just the public in general. I mean, they go out there to hunt, fish, to camp, to have a little solitude, to get away from the world. So a lot of times when you have those conversations, even with outside agencies that aren't necessarily tribal in nature, it's surprising how similar some of your goals and objectives are. We want to compare that to the current situation. So what are our current forest conditions? What do we need to do to get there? And at what rate do we need to do it? So if you've got, I know, again, we'll use the Colville National Forest because Russ just spoke about it. I was surprised to hear them say that, yeah, we really need to be at 80 to 100 million to really maintain our forest health. And we need to be closer to the 100 million number if we're going to catch up. So we look at these and we think, I mean, forests evolve over time, and it's a long period of time. So a lot of times we think, okay, we can go do a treatment and we're done, right? Nope. You're probably going to be back in there 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, but the guy that did it the first time is probably retired by then, so it's hard to have that perspective over time and space. So now we get the projects on the ground, and this is the hard part. The rest of it, we've heard lots of compelling presentations on why we need to do this, but now it gets to, okay, Cody, you go be the guy. Go get me a project on the ground. How do you do that? So what capacity do you need to accomplish those goals? So look at your workforce. Do you have staff to do it? Do you have funding to do it? Do you have contractors that are willing to help get some of the work done if you don't have the staff to do it? Do you have partners that are going to help you kind of push these projects down the road? Funding is a tough one because, I mean, I've been visiting with Tara, and Tara, I've probably been talking to you for, 6 months about this, and I don't know if we have any clearer answer than we did 6 months ago. It's so difficult to kind of navigate all these different funding sources to try to pay for this kind of work. A lot of times there's small pots of money that you're chasing. A lot of folks alluded to this earlier, and a lot of times those are on really short time frames. So, oh, there's 200,000 out there. Closes in 3 days. Okay. How do you put together a good proposal, and more importantly, how do you collaborate? If the priority is to go towards collaborative projects, there needs to be time to collaborate with that funding that we get. So those aren't questions I can answer for you. I can give you some answers from Colville. We've got some funding from the central office, I guess, for Anchor Forest. Thank you, Dave. Hope to get some more. But we've hired a contractor, and it just happened to be a tribal member who just graduated with his master's in forestry. So really, that's probably just, there was an opportunity there. We had enough folks and enough insight to go after that opportunity, and that started us down this road. But again, those opportunities are kind of few and far between, so we have to be ready to jump at those whenever they come around. So opportunities that the tribe can bring to those projects, especially on those non-federal lands that can really benefit tribal members and the tribes as a whole. So we can introduce tribal objectives that typically aren't otherwise considered. A lot of times tribes don't really give input on Forest Service projects unless we see some negative impact to one of the tribe's objectives. But I don't think we take the opportunity very often to go say, well, you know, if we did a couple treatments like this over here that was traditionally huckleberry ground or something, that could really be a benefit. We could get some tribal members going up there and picking huckleberries where they haven't in 40 or 50 years maybe. And that's something I think is a real opportunity that I know I haven't looked at, and I would guess that's probably a common theme across this room at least. This has been said a number of times today too, provide traditional ecologic knowledge to federal agencies. There's a lot of stuff that tribes are really good at doing, that they've been doing for a really long time, that Western science is just now catching up to, and you can explain, oh yeah, if you do this, this is the response, and this is the timing for it, and I think you kind of get funny looks, and I mean, it's something that's difficult to explain to people that that's the way we've always done it. Isn't necessarily justification in their eyes, but having learned that from your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, you understand this is how our forests develop, and it's usually a pretty compelling argument, and you can get those folks to buy into some of that. We can bring capacity. Again, Colville is an example, is at 40 million feet. How do we get them to 80? How do we get them to 100? Can the tribe help bring some capacity to push it towards that 100 million board feet that we really need to restore that forest? And we need to look at that, okay, that's just for the Colville. Now what do I need to do for the Okanagan Natchez? We probably need another 40 million over there. And then, okay, I'm looking down Steve's way. Steve, in between us, what do we need over there? We may be looking at 250 million board feet of capacity we need to help bring. So that's a big, big order, and not a lot of funding or staff to get that kind of work done. The good thing is that tribes have very capable staff, very good at doing this. Most all tribes do a very good job, as Dave said, of taking care of business at home. So we're very knowledgeable in how to get timber projects planned, how to get them implemented, how to get them through completion. And in doing that, it gives us a chance to protect our on-reservation resources. So if you can do a lot of projects in those adjacent federal lands, that's going to put you in a lot better shape when you see large-scale disturbance events, whether that be insect and disease or fire. So challenges, limited staff. Everybody's limited on staff, and especially from some of these tribal agencies that have a lot of BIA funding, that federal funding has strings tied to it. That's to perform work on trust acres. So there's not a lot of flexibility in what you do with the people you have, and a lot of times we're underfunded and understaffed already, so that makes it even more challenging. Funding for additional staff. A lot of these pots of money we're going after are soft money. You don't know from one year to the next if you're going to get it or not. You go hire 4 more guys without a guarantee that you're going to have them the year after that. But those are tough questions to answer. I think contractors can help bridge that gap, but we'll have to see where that funding goes in the future to see if it's something that becomes consistent enough that you can build a program on it. But for the time being, it's difficult to say, okay, we got a pot of $200,000. How long can we work down this road with $200,000, or do we get to step 9 of 10 and we run out of money, and then what? That's, again, a lot of questions out there. Unfamiliar with outside agency processes. So this is a tough one. We started down this road. We heard a lot of different excuses, it seemed like to me, from the Forest Service. Well, we can't do that because of this, or we can't do that because of that. And I didn't really understand why. So when we put our first TFPA proposal together, we had Spruce go work with our contractor, our tribal member, go work with their silviculturist on the Sampoil project they were working on. And the intent was, 1, to help him learn their process, to see what challenges they face, and 2, to bring some capacity. So hopefully, in having an extra silviculture on this, he'll be able to get extra acres done. We'll move it through the process a little faster, but definitely a learning process for us. I mean, I have conversations with him once a month. Okay, what's going on? What are the challenges? What hoops do we need to jump through? How can we help them get projects on the ground? And then the color of money, I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. Where does the funding come from? What can you use it for? And how do we mix funding sources to accomplish all those objectives? Again, tough questions. I don't necessarily have answers for you. I can give you examples of how we're trying to do it at Colville, but this is really something that I've struggled with, and I think we're almost getting to that point with our TFPA projects. Is stewardship contracting the answer? Is 638 contracting the answer? There's a number of different mechanisms I think we could use, but this is going to be something we're going to have to, it's going to be trial and error, I think. It may work good in some places, it may not in others. It's really going to depend on the agency and how those folks work together. And again, that goes back to having support for the work you've got done and passing those successes up the chain. So if you need funding, it's probably not going to come from regional office. Those guys don't have a lot of discretion, but the national office has some discretion on the funding they can send down your way to support special projects. And pick your battles. That's some advice, I guess I would say, going forward. You have to look for those opportunities when you think the tribe can really benefit projects and when they think they can benefit tribal objectives. Again, limited on staff, limited on funding. You can't go collaborate, you can't go help plan, you can't cooperate on every single project they're doing. There's obviously some that make sense, some that don't. So you'll have to look at that as managers and say, okay, where's the best bang for my buck? If I've only got $100,000 to spend, should I spend it on this project, or should I put a little bit of time into both, or does either one of them really buy me anything? And then use the authorities that are unique to tribes when appropriate. And that was stated earlier too. I mean, tribes have a lot of, through TFPA authorities, and I mean, their ability just to go back to DC and lobby for different things. We're unique in that. Having been a BIA employee, I kind of know how that works and what, I guess, the lack of flexibility you have to say certain things or ask for certain things. So I think we should recognize that from our federal partners, that it may not be that they don't want to give us money, they just don't have that in their toolbox. That's not something they can do, is to go back and lobby and say, hey, we'd really like to have another $200,000 for this project. They get what they get, and it's up to the folks in DC to really send that funding down. And we must think about long-term objectives and management through time and space, both on the reservation and throughout the region. Again, you can't treat these things once and assume you're done, especially if we've spent a ton of money on fuels treatment. I don't know, I struggle with that. A lot of the fuels treatment we've done at home, while it's good work, it seems like it only has about a 10 or 15 year effective timeline on it. And a lot of these commercial treatments we do, we go in and do some stocking reduction and do a little species manipulation, and those things they look great for 30 years. I mean, we look back at some of the work we've done 40 years, it still looks really, really good, and I think it would be very resilient to insect disease and fire. So I mean, we got to think about that in our planning efforts, that if we only have a certain number of staff available, a certain amount of money available, again, where is the best bang for our buck? What treatments can we do that will buy us the most down the road? So again, I'm going to steal from Russ's just a little bit here, but I'm going to go a step further. So again, this is Colville National Forest. This is what our current situation is. Obviously, a lot of red, a lot of gray. So you've had mortality there in the past. We continue to have mortality. Looks awful. We want to get to this. And Russ, I agree with you completely, but I want to go a step further. We shouldn't just be treating blocks. We should be trying to balance age, species composition, and structure over time. So, I mean, we've only been doing even age management for about 30 years up on the Colville, but you want to get to a point where you have everything on the landscape. You can't have everything on every acre all the time. You look at a watershed and, okay, you may have huckleberries here for 20 years, and then you kind of get some transition, some succession. Then over here, 20 years, you got really good huckleberry patches. And that's hard to get across to people. They think you should be able to hold forest in a static state, and that's not how it works. So we really need to think about this over time and space, and think about what you do now and how that will impact forests going into the future. And I think I'll probably be doing all right on time, and I'll wrap it up with that. Leave time for a little bit of questions, and if not, we'll just get folks out of here for dinner. Thank you.